my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest episode of Good Trouble. Yes, I have had a couple of people on the show pairing up with me for Good Trouble. This time, it's not just me, it's a whole bunch of people that are my fam to talk about above the table issues that are relevant to board gaming and video gaming and role playing and all sorts of gaming issues in a spirit of education and compassion. So this guest I have here, not the familiar game set, it's all the books. It's very intimidating. So he's a very intelligent man that I've invited on the show today. I have to thank Mick and Starla from Our Family Plays Games. They have been sharing out his stuff, and I went down the Medium rabbit hole as far as the subscription could let me, because I don't pay for Medium, but I really liked what I heard, so I wanted to invite this man on the show. He is a writer, he is a librarian, and he is an all-around very, very deep thinker. It is my pleasure to welcome on Scott Woods. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. So this is Good Trouble. So I want to give the flag, a couple of flags before we start this. So any Good Trouble episode is going to deal with culture, right? So like, if you don't want to hear about that stuff, and I've gotten a couple of comments, we were just talking before the show about like, well, why are you going to talk about this stuff all the time? Welcome to our world where we have to live this stuff all the time. So like the conversations have to keep going, and every single person that I invite on the show has a different story to tell. So as long as people have stories to tell, this is Shelf Stories. We're going to bring them on. If that's not your bag, plenty of other channels. There's plenty of other stuff to watch. So like just giving y'all a flag right now. Also, Good Trouble, we don't censor. So if we got to say something, we are going to say it. And I have a feeling, normally I try to be nice as far as possible. I have a feeling we might say some things, and we're going to try to explain the context of us saying things, but we're going to say some things in this episode. Reading off of my man's blog over here. So I have a lot of, there's a lot of like, I know I'm talking a lot, but there's a lot of preface that has to happen so that the people who will get the most out of this will be the ones watching the show and interacting in the comments. Okay, whether you agree or disagree, I got no problem with disagreement as long as we could do this engaging, right? As long as you gauge the issues and we can talk. Okay, so I've talked enough. First, I want to introduce Scott, a very interesting man, or I'll help him, let him introduce himself. So we would talk before the channel. You are a board gamer, which I did not know before the show. And you're also a librarian. So maybe talk about a little bit about both of those identities, and because we're very familiar with both of them on this show.
Sure. So I am I would say an adult long board gamer, right? So you can actually see out of all my many books, there's a few board games in the back down there, right?
Oh, there it is. I see them. I see them appearing out. There they are.
Yeah. So the Aliens game is back there. One of the Pathfinder sets is back there. I'm a big solo gamer, right? As you can imagine, based on my writings, I don't have a lot of friends. And so I do a lot of solo board gaming. So yeah. I have been a serious board gamer probably much of my adult life. I didn't really start collecting board games until I would say the last 6 years, give or take. I always had some, but as a serious collector, I would say the last 6 years when I had to go like buy shelving for games.
Yeah, that's the threshold, right? When I got a shelf, I can't just keep them on my bookshelf. I can't just keep them on the floor.
Right, exactly.
Like, I got to get something for this.
Right.
But so you said solo games, but there are different types of solo games. Are you a Euro person? Or you sound like a story person if you're Pathfinder and Aliens.
Well, it varies, right? So I'm just kind of into various solo experiences, but I'm not very Euro, right? So
sorry, David Tursi, if you're watching, I know you watch sometimes. Sorry.
Yeah, I do like the ones that kind of chase the RPG experience, right? So I like ones that develop and that kinds of deck building. I love decks, anything with cards. I'm kind of a big fan of. So yeah,
nice. All right,
and then as what's that?
You're also a writer.
Big time. Yeah.
Big time. So, that's how we know you. So that's how I've discovered you. So maybe tell us a little bit about the writing that you do.
I've written 3 books, 2 books of poetry and 1 book of essays, all about Prince, right? I'm a big Prince fan. And but I
favorite Prince song right now. Favorite Prince song.
Oh, That's impossible. But the answer is today's answer is something in the water does not
Wow.
compute. That's generally my number one pick.
That's a little bit of a
Mhm.
deep cut right there. It's not on 1999 or Purple Rain or anything like that. Okay.
Right. Well, it's on 1999.
Is
Right.
it? Okay.
It
So that's a
is.
little
It
bit of a
is.
deeper cut though. People don't Let's Go Crazy and Raspberry Beret. Was Raspberry Beret on there?
No, that was later.
Okay, I was a little bit later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was my jam. Raspberry Beret. I get that little
Okay. No, it's an excellent song. Yeah.
nice.
Right. But yeah, so I have been writing professionally for several years now in various capacities. I have a weekly column locally here in Columbus, Ohio through Columbus Alive. And then I had been writing for the last 6 months. I've been writing for Level at Medium, and I was doing like 2 articles a week for them. So for the past 6 months during the pandemic, I kept busy, right? Doing about 3 articles a week on top of any other writing that I wanted to do or meant to do or got paid to do. So, and I have several books in progress, which is why I recently let my contract with Level expire so I could kind of get back to, it's time for me to put another book out, right? So, yeah.
Nice. All right. So today we're talking about good trouble stuff, right? We're talking about culture and representation and feeling and being POC in board games, right? So the reason I want to register, so this is where the gamer stuff is going, just the pure gamer stuff is going to be sectioned off. And if you don't want to listen to the other stuff, then that's perfectly fine. But just kind of section off for people. Okay. So then, so I read 3 articles. I was able to meet 3 articles until I hit the paywall. And you had the most recent one as of today, which is we're recording this on the 19th, and we're gonna July 19th. We're gonna release this in August. So the most recent one I read was about Dungeons and Dragons, and this was actually the reason I reached out to you, or like the thing that said, okay, I got to reach out to you. The story of Bonjour the Barbarian.
Yeah, so Bonjour the Barbarian was my most famous D&D character. But basically, and I think my last D&D character, now that I think about it, I played Bonjour for about 2 years near the end of my tenure with D&D. I don't play anymore. It's been some time since I played D&D, and it's not because I don't like it or because there's any problems with it. It's just because you gotta, at my age, I want to play with the right people and, people who, can have a good time with it without being weird or silly about it. And that's actually hard for me to find around here. So I haven't played D&D in a long time.
What does that mean, being weird or silly?
So like, I'm not really into cats who like I like to play my game. I don't like to play my game with comedians. You know what I'm saying? So let's have fun. Let's do the game. But like, if we taking detours into jokes and impressions, and I'm like, yo, I just need some dice rolling and some adventures happening. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to D&D, a lot of people, they default to like the comic, and they think that that's what the people want out of their tables, and it's like the easier thing. It's the more low hanging fruit when it comes, especially on the DM side. I read that you were DM for a while,
Yeah.
and I also DM for years, and it took me a while to kind of get the sense of like, look, I don't have to like be the jokester and like make all the I don't have to do that. Like I like make a good story.
Right? Yeah, and I mean that drives me crazy about board games as well, right? Like when I watch a board game video and like they're just kind of like clowning, I'm just like, yo, I'm good on that. Click, there are way too many options, So yeah.
So this is so I wanted to focus on Bonjour because we are going to the title of this episode is going to be gaming while black, right? And seriously, that's the thing, right? It's the thing, like dot while black. And Bonjour seemed to like you had an experience like introducing him to the table, so maybe we could start there and talk about how that kind of came off.
Yeah, it was a trip. So Bonjour was a pretty stock character. Like he wasn't outstanding, right? And when I created him, like in my mind, and when I drew him, he was a black character, right? And pretty much everybody I played with was white. And that's like almost through the entire tenure of my D&D days. But I introduced the character and I started playing the character, and and there was it wasn't really a problem. It was just more like a question where it was just kind of like, so where's this character from? And I'm like, what does it matter? Right? Like, they were really concerned about where this character might be from. And I'm like, look, the character's already got a French name, and France technically doesn't exist. So I don't know what the problem is. But, the problem was that the character was Black, and they just didn't have any touch point for that, as players, as people. Apparently, like, I was the Black person they knew, but I guess if I started calling myself Bonjour, they would have a problem with that. So it was a really weird moment, right? It was like, oh, so Black characters are not a thing, right? And this was back in the old days, right? So
how old we talking? You don't have to age yourself, but we're talking which edition are we talking?
We're talking in the 80s, right? So, and like I started early, like 80, so, and that was all the way up through about 87, 88. And then off and on here and there along the way. But so there was like no Black characters in the modules. There's no Black characters in the books. There's no Black character in the cartoon, right? So it's just like there was like no Black character in D&D until that really bad movie, right? So
which one? There were so many.
The one with the Wayans brothers.
Oh, Marlon Wayans. Okay,
yes.
Jeremy Irons. Oh, that
yes.
horrendous.
Because
because that's a trope, right? I mean, he was there, but he was the jokester. Like, Black characters are allowed to be in this stuff, but they have to be the jokey thief that that we all root for, like the Eddie Murphy always voicing the animal, like the funny animal type thing.
Well, I mean, look, and you don't hire a Wayans brother for a dramatic role, so I get it, right? So you wanted your character to do something like that, and that's what they got. So, but yeah, that's kind of the run that I was doing, and it became like at first when I started, I wasn't really caught up in like, Dungeons and Dragons is completely imaginary, right? Everything that unless you're just playing straight modules, everything that you bring to it is stuff that you bring to it, right? And so I couldn't see any reason why characters wouldn't be Black. But a lot of I would say some, maybe not a lot, but some of the players, that raised an eyebrow for some, for some reason that they needed to interrogate, not that I needed to interrogate.
What do you say to the idea? So a couple of things off of that. So then the way you say that, raise an eyebrow, I can imagine someone saying, okay, someone raised an eyebrow. What's the big deal? I came in with my character and it was like, I came in with like an orc wizard and that one raised an eyebrow. So like, okay, when you say that, raise an eyebrow, why are we talking about that in a Good Trouble video? What like drill down a little bit more about like what, like the level of discomfort and why that is a salient, why we should make that salient. Why is that something we should be talking about?
So especially with Dungeons and Dragons, but I imagine with any kind of game that's like Dungeons and Dragons, something we don't talk about as players, regardless of who or what you are, is how much trust is involved in making the game good for as many people as possible, right? Like in your group, in your campaign, on your game night, whatever. Trust is a really big deal that we don't really spend a lot of time talking about.
It's the whole heart of the game, though, right?
What's that?
It's the whole heart of the game. Like they would call it the social contract.
Right. Well, you would think. But that's kind of the problem that we're having today, is that people are not applying that value to their games, right? Or they think that they are, but that's not good trust. It's not real trust. It's not fair trust. It's not knowing trust. And so when you come to D&D with a character, it looks like escapism, but you wrap a lot of yourself up into the game, right? It's your imagination at play, it's your decisions at play, your intelligence is at play, strategy is at play. There's a lot of you in it, even though it's not you. And when that gets questioned, or if that gets othered, or if that gets kind of set, apart from, if it's considered apart from the canon or what is correct, then all of a sudden your game night is trash, right? As a Black player or a player of color, or whatever, like if that's the reason why they're doing it, I imagine that if you ask a lot of women traditionally, they would make a similar case, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah, no, it's
there,
such a valuable point
yeah,
because like I think that that's one of the go-tos, right? This is fantasy. We're here as a break, and if there's racial stuff going on, then you're putting it in, and it's like uh, when it comes to D&D, I mean, like, and I've made a lot of characters. I've played a lot of D&D in my life. I think like I reflect the kind of characters that I make. Like I'm either making a version of myself. Like if I play a healer, I'm a healing type of guy. Like so, there's always a little bit when I was almost a cleric, a real cleric, a priest, and I'm always like doing social justice. I'm a social worker, so I have that. So like anytime I play a heal, I'm bringing a little bit myself, or I'm playing like exactly against type. So like if I'm playing like really someone really aggressive that are like someone who just wants to burn the world, then I'm like acting out because some kind of like urge that I want to make act out, and that's both aspects of myself, right?
of course.
Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about? Like, even if you're
I
bringing in
mean,
something wacko,
well,
it's still
actually,
answering
it's even,
something.
I'll take it even deeper, right? Like I'm talking about your actual real world psyche, right? Like the things that you believe and think about yourself as a person come into this game because you bring all of that into the decisions about your characters, into the decisions about the people you will play with, into the decisions about the campaigns that you will participate in. Like those are personal decisions as well, right? That have really almost nothing to do with the details of a character or the details of a campaign. But the minute that all of you that you bring to it becomes questioned or
Mhm.
becomes a problem for other players, then we have a problem. And it's a problem that you're going to take personally. And you should take it personally.
Even if it's
Frank,
just like a small little like eye raise, even if it is all like, what's like like it isn't warmly welcomed.
yeah, like an eye raise is never just an eye raise,
Mm.
right? So there's always something behind it,
Mm.
So yeah, and you have to determine in that moment if that's something worth fighting about. But I think in this day and age, look, that's kind of what the conversations on at all the tables are about now, right? It's like
Mhm.
what what is diversity and is that real,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's
Yeah.
kind of the primary question.
Exactly. And so we can lead into, and I want to hit a couple of your articles at this
Mhm.
point, right? Because you have a very strong voice. One of the things I really appreciated about reading Scott, I was talking before the call, is, on shelf stories, I try to be as nice as possible, but also kind of hit the point. I appreciate the way Scott hits the point. He hits the point, but still, like, I don't get the sense that he's attacking people. I think it's just speaking truth. It's a very prophetic voice. It's very, very cool. So the article, which is the lead article, which is you put Bonjour and stories about him and the stuff we're talking about in the larger context of the quote unquote reckoning that is happening in D&D, right? So maybe talk a little bit about that, what you mean by that, whether what is happening according to your like what you're seeing, and is it what we need to happen?
So I'll answer it in reverse. It absolutely needs to happen, and it's long overdue. Uh, D&D and gaming in general is just a microcosm of society, much like any other subculture, right? It's a microcosm of society. And so the values and the history and the assumptions and the stereotypes and all the good and bad things materialize in this type of environment. And so D&D is, because D&D is fantasy, does not absolve it of reality, right? It Much of D&D is based in reality. So it's not like we're just going off and creating an entirely new world that has no grounding in racism, sexism, ableism. All of those things are present in D&D from day one, from day one. And so the question is, well, not the question, but the observation is that at some point, at the point that the game, whatever the game is, but in this case D&D, at the point that a game hits like a popular critical mass and people begin to become aware of it, and when they become aware of it, they get curious, and when they're curious, they want to play. And when they start playing it, people who have not just been like ingrained for the last 10 years into a game are able to see things that maybe people who've been in it long term do not or had not considered. Or when the game broadens into other communities and populations that it traditionally has not, then you're going to find all kinds of blind spots. And D&D had lots of blind spots, which, to its credit, I would say over the last 10 years, it has sought to rectify on some level or another, right? So you would start seeing Black characters in all kinds of places that you might not see them, which is awesome, right? Great, thank you, right?
Right. Like, so you could definitely tell the difference between like the first edition manuals, the third edition manuals, fourth edition, like the more women, more people of color, like that are featured. Because you go through the regular rule books and there's like the sidebar characters, and there it's actually gotten a lot more rich and diverse.
Absolutely.
So we're not saying that it's like a terrible story.
Well, what's interesting is that all of those changes are cosmetic. Okay, let's just be clear about that. That's basically gaming's answer to what is diversity, right? But diversity has never been enough, right? Diversity that doesn't have agency is not going to address real root kind of issues that may be embedded in the game or in the community, right? And so when we talk about a reckoning, to get back to your original question, when we talk about a reckoning, I mean, that sounds like a really powerful word for something that's really just kind of an assessment.
It sounds
right?
scary. It sounds scary, Scott. If any moderate folks have made it this far, we're saying scary words now.
And here's my thing, right? It's just an assessment. It's a reassessment. Now, if the word reckoning terrifies you, I mean, that probably has more to do with your feelings than it does with what the word is trying to accomplish, right? The word is trying to accomplish equity. The word is trying to accomplish agency. It's trying to make the game more reasonable and more palatable to people who traditionally have been maybe dismissed or othered or grossly stereotyped or whatever by the game that they love to play, right? And really, if you are a racist, right? If you are just a stone cold racist who loves to play D&D, the reckoning technically doesn't affect you, right? It only affects you if you want to use stock characters, stock modules, stock adventures and campaigns where these values have been incorporated. But if you, with your imagination and your racism, want to go off and make your own campaigns without any of these considerations, nothing is stopping you. So technically, we don't have to have this argument. Not you and I, but us and them, right? But
Okay, so definitely a couple of strands that I wanted to pick up. So
sure.
So before agency, right? It's a buzzy word. It sounds it can mean many different things. Say a little bit more about what you mean by getting past diversity to agency.
Sure. So think about your job. Maybe not your job, but a job, the typical American job.
9 to 5 or 9 to 7 with your emails.
And sure. Right. And think about when they refer to diversity, what they mean. But generally and traditionally what they mean, and it's still basically true, which is why we're changing the language again, is that somebody who is not white now has a job, right? So they've hired a Black person, a woman, whatever, right? And they've done that to
and just run down the list,
And they've done that to the tune of maybe 2% of the staff or 5% of the staff or whatever, or maybe like one new manager or whatever. So you have achieved diversity, but what is that person empowered to do? What is that person allowed to do? Can they create change that allows other people like them to participate, to engage, to get hired? If the answer is not really, then you may have diversity. You do not have agency. You do not have equity, right? You do not have inclusion. So think of it like this. You can sit at the table, which is kind of what diversity is. I'm sitting at the table. Or you can eat. or you get to set the menu. That's diversity, equity, and like agency,
Mm.
right? Kind of in that order. And
So you're
those are just
talking, so like you're talking about like who is like Jeremy Crawford would be like the one of the people that are in charge of the creative of D&D, like that person being a person of color, or like the module writers or the mechanics people.
yeah, like yeah, absolutely. So for instance, if the people who are creating adventure, if the crews, because let's just kind of open it up to, as opposed to individuals, let's open it up to like companies
Right. Okay.
or
Mhm.
collectives. Um, if you have that kind of input, right? Because no module is ever by one person,
Right.
right? There's always somebody, a group behind them, like looking at things.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, look, um, you should, I mean, whether your intent is to include people of other ethnicities or not, for in any capacity, for any reason, it never hurts to have a person of color at the table, right? And not just to go around saying, well, you don't have any people of color in your thing. I mean, that's also a good point, but there may be some other more nuanced things, blind spots that you're not aware of. And people who are generally oppressed or victimized or attacked by segments of their society are generally aware of other oppressed groups' issues, right? So like if all of a sudden I'm in the room at Wizards of the Coast or the new TSR, which apparently would never happen, but if I'm in the room with the rest of them, right, and they're all white and whatever, and they are making an adventure that, let's just say it emulates some fantastic version of early America, whatever that means. And I say, hey, maybe your shaman character shouldn't be white. you know, I'm not indigenous, but I can certainly tell you when your whiteness is present, like black people know more about whiteness than white people. Let's just be clear about that. And
Okay.
so it's always
The
like
water's starting to rise, people. We're starting to get into it.
I mean, I mean, that's true in any facet of life you want to apply that to. And it's because we need to know that to survive this society, like we need to be able to navigate. We need to be, it used to just be a microaggression. I think we've stopped calling those that, and we just call them what it is. And that's just racism, right? So we're very hip, as it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
So you should want us in the room, and you should empower us to tell you when you are missing the ball.
Mm-hmm. I had the person who wrote. I don't know if you know the supplement. I know you're not into D&D now as much, but there was a supplement called Ancestry and Culture in fifth edition. The person who wrote that split apart race and culture. So like we're
Mhm.
not talking about races anymore. Like
Right.
we're talking like the orc race and and that's an example of like a deeper issue. Just that humans are humans and they have the flexible stats, and then everything else is like every barbarian is this and every Arakoa is this, and finding ways to kind of break those dyads apart. So in terms of a concrete thing, that it took a number of POCs writing and speaking and using their voices for people to kind of realize that.
And I think I mean, obviously that was a step in the right direction, right? Like, that needed to happen for lots of reasons,
Right,
I
and
think.
it's barely happening. It's still kind of on the it's still a
Right,
fringe
right.
thing.
And
Hasn't
it's
made it
still,
into the core rulebook yet.
and it's still optional,
Right.
right? It's not, I mean, this is not like the new edition of Monopoly, right? You get to not use these rules if you don't want to use them,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right. Okay, so then now the waters are gonna really start to rise. We're warming up. We're easing people in, easing people in. So you've made a couple of comments about like, okay, if you are a racist, then you're free to you'll play the game in the way that you want. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you've made it this far into the show, you're probably not going to self-identify as a racist, right? I think there are people that do so.
I've met very few.
There are people that self-identify as racist, but they don't make it. They're not going to make it this far into this show. I think it's more along the lines of people who like it the way it is, who are comfortable with the way it is, and they'll say it's like, okay, does liking it the way it is make me a racist? Are you going to call me a racist for liking it the way it is? or for advocating for slower pace of change, because you listen to Jason on Shelf Stories, Scott Woods on his Medium blog. It sounds like we're in a hurry to make some stuff happen. So it's like, okay, I agree with what you're saying, but let's we can slow the pace down. Don't throw the baby out the bathwater. Don't knock down what's there to build up what's new, because we don't even know what's going to be what's new. So what do you, would you have would you be able to address that person, that I guess a theoretical person who is, who does not self-identify as a racist, but they do have some kind of they have an affinity for quote unquote the way things were?
Sure. Look, I've met very few racists who self-identify as racist. And really what's important here, it's the label of racist is less important than your behavior, than the thing that you did that could be perceived as racist, right? So I'm not here to call you a racist. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to say, hey, this thing that you did, I think that's a racist thing. And we can maybe work on this thing so that you just become a better person or whatever. And we don't have to get caught up in me writing you off as a racist. I just want to focus on the thing. And so I think that largely that's kind of what we've been doing, right? That's kind of what players of color have been doing. And because white people are generally sensitive to any charge of racism, they just perceive that as being called racist. And they perceive that as them personally being called racist. And when that's not really the goal, we're not here to point out racists. We're here to fix your game. Okay, we're here to make your game more accessible, more popular, doper. We're here to
doper, exactly.
Your game, right? That's what we're here to do. Right. We're here to broaden this, this world that you thought was unlimited was actually pretty limited in certain ways, very value-based ways, very culture-based ways that closed it off to whole segments of the society for many years. So that's what I would say on the first point. On the second point about the rate of change, I would say, and I will roughly paraphrase James Baldwin here, how long do you want for your change? This game is decades old. They was playing this in the 70s. How long do you want that change to take? That's not for me to answer. That's for them to answer.
They want it's I find that it's about the noise level. So they right? So it's I think there's this idea, the arc of history bends upward. So it's this is what they were in the 70s and this is what they were in the 80s, but we're in 2020 and we don't think like that anymore. So it's just allowing that as if that was natural, right? And we're more enlightened nowadays. And if we just keep on going, right? And the situation will resolve itself. We had a black president, we had all these things, right? You've probably heard all that. You've probably heard a lot of this, right?
I mean, I hear that pretty much about everything in society. So yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But I don't. But to me, this is an easy fix. Go for the low-hanging fruit. Take the win here. We're offering you a win. This change is a win, right? Especially if it's a change you don't have to enforce, right? You literally can be wherever your game is and play the game you want to play. And Black people are not going to show up at your game night talking about, why is your dice white? We're not going to do that, right? So, but seriously, it's an easy fix. Be mindful. And if you don't want to be bothered to be mindful, hire people who are, right? We're happy to take your money to fix your game. That's not a problem. You're going to make a lot of money off of this, either way it goes. So, why not make money and be right?
All right. I like that. So then even deeper into the waters, right? You mentioned before about, I'm going to mess up this. They're going to mess up what you said, but it was something along the lines of Black people know whiteness better than white people.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
You
is
got
going
that
to be
100% right.
that's a thing,
Mhm.
right? And that's a thing that, like, first of all, I think that I get a lot of pushback from just mentioning race in general, right? I'm racifying things. I mean, we're being divisive. So, like, we'll address that along the way in terms of
Mhm.
being divisive. But that idea, like, unpack that for me a little bit, because I think that's a very scary, maybe, but like definitely a ear ringer,
Sure,
that Black people know whiteness better than white people.
sure. So Black people do not have the luxury of being colorblind. That's not on us. That's on the society that has been created around us or on top of us, right? Or in response to us. But that's not on Black people. That's on white people. White people did that. Like, they created those values. They created those systems. They created those institutions. They, I mean, if you want me to be on the nose, they brought us here, right? So it's kind of their problem to fix. Now, here's the thing about whiteness, and this is very important. And I hope that whoever's here, still here, holds on. Okay. This is
Hold
very
on.
important.
That's it. Hold on.
Uh, White people have the luxury of not seeing themselves as white. They have completely normalized whiteness in society, right? So things that they think are normal are white. And so when someone who is not white encounters it and has a different experience, simply because of who and what they are, white people get caught off guard. They're surprised that somebody would have a problem with this purely normal thing, this thing that always works in my favor, this thing that always caters to me, this system or this idea or these movies or in this image, all of these things that are just very normal for white people. When other people that are not white encounter them, there's a dynamic that takes place. Now
A mismatch. Yeah.
that
I
might
talk
be
about
good,
mismatches. Yeah.
that could be good, that could be bad. It's usually bad, right? But it could be good. There are things that when we engage and we encounter those things that we can navigate and work around. But the point is that I'm just going to say Black people because that's who I'm generally talking about. But this applies to pretty much any person of color in this country. But right, but
I ain't Black. I'm talking a lot about this stuff.
um, but it is in our interest in a very, and I don't mean that in a metaphorical way, I mean it in a very concrete, literal way. It is in our best interest to be constantly aware of whiteness and to know it, and to know how how oblivious to their own whiteness white people are. And because they're oblivious to it, because they benefit from it without even trying, it is contingent upon us to be mindful. We have to be on guard about it because sometimes that whiteness is violent. Sometimes that whiteness is literally doing us harm, right? Um, and again, I don't expect white people to just be able to go out and see just start picking things out like, oh, this is whiteness. You don't even have to, right? Society is set up that way. You don't have to go looking for it. It's already there. You already own everything. And this is why so many of these fanboy arguments, whether it's about gaming, whether it's about Marvel is too diverse, Marvel movies are too diverse,
Yeah,
whether
Ray
it's about
Skywalker and
all of that, right? All of that. They are responding to, again, that reckoning, right? That reassessment. They're responding to people of color stepping up and saying, why am I not in this? Am I not part of this? It is important that I'm acknowledged as part of this. You don't get to say something that is all white is representative. That was ridiculous 40 years ago. It's even more ridiculous now.
Mhm.
And what's happening now, I would say within the last 15 years, what is happening is that all of a sudden everybody has been given the same tool with which to voice that opinion. Right? We have all been given social media. Facebook is like, I don't know, 15, 20 years old. Twitter's like 20 years old. Right? So we have all been given these
mid
tools.
2000s around there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we've all been given these tools to engage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of our lives. Right? And so if anything changed, it is that. These issues are ancient. Our criticism of Dungeons and Dragons is old. We were talking about this stuff in the 80s, right? So the only thing that's really changed is that now you have to hear it. Mm-hmm. Now you got to hear it. You go on YouTube and you're looking for another video about, drow elves. Guess what? You're going to catch it. So, I mean, that's just how it is today.
So many different branches. I'm going to try to keep them as many of them in my head as possible. Mm-hmm. So then you were talking about how white people have all the money, they have all the center of culture, like they're able to kind of define normal and have the privilege to be able to kind of erase race. So then you might imagine like an average person, white descent or whatever we want to call it, saying, "Well, I don't have a lot of money. Well, I don't have things. I don't have power that you're saying before. Matter of fact, I'm just a working person. Like, what is the difference between me and you? You're a librarian. I'm a librarian. You're a social worker. I'm a social worker. Like, what? We're at the same level, right? And yet I'm said to have all these things, and I am said to have caused all these things, or I'm said to be the cause. So, like you said before, white people. Well, I'm a white person, so therefore you're talking about me, right? So then, how would you respond to that?
You're taking too many shortcuts to the truth. So for instance, one, I would say that we may have the same, it isn't about, you want it to be, you white person, you want it to be.
That's okay. I can stand as a white person. It's fine.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. You're going to lose so many followers.
We're just kidding.
So I would say, look, I went to work today as a librarian. I went to work this morning, right? And I'm there with like 10 other white people who are working there, who are also librarians. And yet the issue isn't what I think so much or what they think so much. It is about, and this is the thing, it is about society. It is about the system and the culture of society that is operating around us all the time. And this is the key, is responding to us differently. It's
almost like you think of, I think of it in board gaming terms, right? So it's like, imagine, like a game, you have your avatar, and it's like the whole game system kind of does stuff, right? So if you're playing Pandemic's my favorite game. Are you a Pandemic person?
I played it, yeah.
You have played, right?
Oh yeah.
So then it's almost like, so you have different colored pawns, right? So then you move your pawn from city to city, and the game acts a certain way. Now imagine you're playing a different color pawn, nothing really changed, but then the board behaves differently.
Exactly.
So like, imagine you're playing Pandemic and like you're walking, but then nothing happens. Everything's there. But then if you're playing a certain color pawn, you only have 2 actions.
Mm-hmm.
Or once you move 2 actions, then a cube like follows you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a weird thing that, like, when you talk about systems, maybe that's like the best way to think about it in terms of the world reacting to you differently.
Yeah, and just think of America as 1,000 board games doing that to your pawn at the same time. Right? Every game you play, it has 2 sets of rules across the board, right? Like across the board. When you go to school, it's like that. When you go to work, it's like that. When you go to church, it's like that. When you go on the internet, it is always like that, right? When you go see a movie, it's like that. When you watch an award show, it's like that. And when you play a board game, it's like that.
Maybe not on the board game. As a matter of fact, like that's why we love board games, because like theoretically on the board, it's like everybody moves the same pawns, does the same thing. But then, I told you about this before. I made a video about Jamaica, the board game, and Jamaica pulled off it's an old board game about piracy, and it's being reprinted, and it pulls off the magic trick of being a board game about Jamaica with zero black people.
You can't do that.
And talking about trust, like I love how you said that. I love how you said, how can I trust this hobby when, like, my wife's from Haiti, right? Where Haiti's right there, Haiti, Jamaica, right there. So like when I told my wife, she almost drove off the road. She's like, "No way, no, you're lying."
Right.
And it's like that, and people might say, "Well, that doesn't matter." They talk about pirates, talk about all this other stuff. Like you're bringing that in, and it's like, first of all, why are you telling me what I think? Why are you telling me what my reaction should be?
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, it's like, I bring Jamaica with me, right? I know what Jamaica is. Oxtail is delicious, and the music is banging, and there's a bunch of beautiful people, and it's like, you want me to shelve that because why? Why you want me to shelve that?
Well, and they conflate how they feel or how society responds to them with how it responds to everyone, and that's just because America's primary value is not patriotism, it is not liberty, it is not truth, it is comfort. And so if you are comfortable, just look at the way, not to get too in the weeds, but look at the way that we are responding to the pandemic and the rest of the world is responding to the pandemic, right? Like we're still in it, but you wouldn't know that because we have currently the most comfortable version of that. America chases comfort. And we especially chase it in our discussions about race and culture, right? We run to the comfortable spot. And because it's generally speaking, if you're a white person, your comfort level is way high in a society, way high. And that's because it is geared to you. It has been designed for you. It has been built for you. It is sustained for you, for your literal whiteness. It is doing that whether a white person is in the room or not. That's how powerful that is. That's how deep rooted that is. Right.
So, I've done this a couple of times now. I seem to be having, because I get into a lot of conversations with folks like this. Well, I imagine what people will say is, I work hard. And if America, like the flip side of that comfort thing, I actually agree with you. But the flip side is like, we're really into work. We love working. Well, now we don't love work. We hate working, but like we work more than any, like many, many other countries, we work a lot. Right. So like so to hear white people love comfort is going to sound like, oh my God, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I work my patootie off to have what I have. I work, I work double shifts and I do this and I do this. And it's like, if I have a wall full of games, then like chances are, unless I'm born into some like crazy privilege, that's a lot of work going into that, more than 40 hours. So like, how do you square that circle?
You just said the most important word. You just said privilege. That comfort is not me sitting on the couch. Okay. Comfort is the exercising of your liberty, of your freedom. And freedom or liberty are not the same thing, for the record. But it is your ability to do that, right? And to be able, the more you can do that, the more comfortable you generally are in your society. Let us, instead of looking at comfort as me sitting on the couch watching television, think of it as the things like safety, equity, right? You know that police respond differently to you based on how you look. I think everybody knows, whether they like it or whether they're willing to admit it, we all know it. That's just math. That's not an assumption. That's not an opinion. That's math. That's statistics, okay? Proven over and over and over again, year after year after year, right?
It gets frustrating to have that conversation over and over again of like, okay, do they really treat people differently? Or is it because like it's the blacks and the browns that do all the crime? Is that why they're being treated differently?
I mean, of course not, because that's not even the bulk of the interactions we have with the police. Like there is no crime, right? And we're still being engaged by police when there is no crime. So that's how we know that that's true. Okay. And, or at least that's how we know what it's not based in, right? It's not based in crime. It's based in something else, right? It's based in, the shortcut is it's based in bias, but whatever.
Mhm.
So anyhow, what were we talking about? So I got so caught up. But the point is that privilege, right?
Privilege,
Privilege.
yeah.
We need to stop. Well, they need to stop talking about privilege like it means money. That's not what we're talking about. If you think that that's what that means, you should be mad at other white people.
Or like access to power. Like I don't know my senator. I can't just call my senator, or I don't have any more power than any other voter or something like that. How can I be privileged?
Do you have the power to walk down the street unmolested by the police? Yes. That's the answer. Yes. Do you have, on average, better schools? Are you treated better by healthcare systems? Right? Are you represented, like fully represented by your government, by your society, by your cultural mores and values, by your board games, right? Do you see yourself in everything around you? That's a privilege. That's a privilege.
The
And
seeing
that,
yourself is a big one.
yeah,
I think that
and
it's something that a lot of moderate folks, and I'll drop the facade for now, but like I speaking from my heart in this one, I really feel like if you're a white person, that is such a thing where it's like you can take for granted that you will be on a box or you will be on the screen, and it feels weird to like imagine like BET. He's like, oh, you already have a channel. You have BET. You have, you have like the Black Caucus. So it's like, what? Can we have a white caucus? No, we can't. That'll be racist. And it's like, well, you don't need one.
you don't need one.
And
You
that's the
not
thing.
only do
You
you
don't need one.
already have one, but it's already working for you all the time, right? You just said something that is really telling, right? Like about pretty much how they don't perceive. And it's because you don't have to. You don't have to consider these things, right?
Mhm.
There's every day there's a 99% chance your day is going to go your way, whatever that means, right? It certainly isn't not going to go your way because you're white. But as a black person, there's a 99% chance on any given day my day is going to go south because I'm black, because of it. Not because of something I did, but because of something I am. And that system of all society's systems, those 1,000 board games, are responding to me.
Mm-hmm.
It can't. I mean, it can't help itself. It's not even really. It's not. There's no person behind it. It's a system, and it's designed to benefit some and not benefit others. It's
Mm-hmm.
completely remote controlled at this point, right?
Or it could be a person operating on unconscious bias.
Yeah,
Right. So like,
sure.
I might either do all things like, okay, if I apply for a job and my name is Devonte, I'm not going to get as many callbacks as if my name is, Ryan,
Yes.
like
I mean
just those
that has
little
been
things.
proven so many times over. We should just be starting our conversations with that understanding. And anybody who doesn't have that understanding, when it comes to a conversation about race, they should you just don't talk to that person, right?
I
I
find it
don't.
hard.
No,
I
I
find
get
it.
it. You're a healer. I understand. I am not. Well, I'm a different kind of healer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a cleric,
Right, right,
right? I might be a subclass,
right.
but my intent
You're a bard.
is to my intent is to help. You may not like the medicine, but it's medicine,
Mm.
right? I'm not doing it because I'm not even at this point, I'm not even doing it because I have to. I want to, right? Like I want to see this get better, all of this, all of us to improve, to be better, to be more fair, to be more just, to be more mindful. That's my goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? If and my thing is I get to tell the truth the way I tell the truth because I mean, really, who am I compared to 10,000 other articles that are saying something completely different that you're going to see every day anyway? I mean, the least you could do is get the truth from one place.
Okay. Let's talk about we brought this up again, another one we brought up before the call. And it's an aspect of quote unquote whiteness, right? And I think it's pretty clear at this point, if you've made it this far, right? If we're not talking about white people. I think there was another blog, it wasn't written by you, but I know we both read it. It's not white people, it's whiteness people, right? So like we distinguish the system and the behaviors and the cluster behavior from the people, right? We always have hope for people. It's just these behaviors that they're critiquing. So I hope that's clear at this point. So then there's an aspect of whiteness that I think we both really struggle with, which is the emphasis on feelings, the emotionality, right? So then, say a little bit more, and I think this also plays into the whole like CRT thing, and it plays into a lot of different kind of areas of pushback. And it also plays to the comfort thing, because what is comfort at the end of the day? It's like it's the solidification of nice feelings. And we're going to exclude upset feelings, that kind of thing. So talk about like how you've encountered when you're talking to different white people about this, how you navigate the issue of feelings.
So to be clear, I don't talk to white people about these things anymore. I stopped doing that directly years ago. That's why I write, right? So that they have to contend with 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 words of what I think. And then they can argue with that, right? So to be clear, and I do that over hundreds of articles, right? So if they only
everywhere, man, this man writes for the New York Times, people.
So if they only encounter one, usually, if I respond to them, which is pretty rare anymore, right? Like I also consciously don't respond to people who respond to articles that I write. And there's several reasons for that, but mostly because I want you to sit with it. I don't want I don't need to be engaged in some random argument with some random person that I don't know anything about after I've just given you 1,500 words, right? I've just given you like 4-5 pages and you wrote 3 sentences in response and you want my attention. Nah, man, you got to do some more homework, dog. You need to sit with that. You need to think about what I wrote. You need to look up a couple things, because I did all of that before I wrote one word. So to me, so to be clear, I don't generally engage people on that level.
Sure.
I don't get in Twitter wars. I don't do any of that. Okay. I just write another thing. And if you're lucky or unlucky, you might be the subject of the next thing, depending on how you act in response to my information. Right?
That's fair.
Sometimes I'll take a time out on an article and I'll just stop and do like a Q&A just to kind of catch everybody up. Like, hey, I know I don't respond to you, but here's the one time I will. And I get to choose who I get to respond to. And so I'll pick like 3, 4, 5 questions and just kind of address them. Right? Because generally speaking, if you write as much as I do, you get those questions a lot. The same questions a lot. It's like working in improv, right? So, and so, yeah, I don't worry too much about that one-on-one thing, because to me, let us talk about the problem with talking to one white person as one person of color, the one-to-one. Let's talk about the problem of that. The problem of that is that generally speaking, the white person in question is looking to feel better, right? First of all, they're doing the asking, right? They're generally speaking, 99 times out of 100, the white person is, starting that conversation with a question. Can I ask you this? Can I just, that kind of thing.
Or like, that sounded weird what you said. Can you explain this?
Yeah, like black people are not out here looking for white people to explain things to, right? I mean, there's always a few, but I'm not one of them. And most of us are not, right? And so that conversation generally comes to us. And then we have to decide if we're going to do that. Now, most of us do. I mean, I wish we wouldn't, but most of us do. But the reason why there's a problem there is because there's so many problems actually, but I'll focus on maybe the top 1 or 2.
Sure.
And that is, is that the white person has almost no skin in the game, right? Like they're only really dealing with their emotion, how something made them feel. And now they want me to come and smooth that over or explain it so that they can go smooth it over, or they can at least say they had the meeting and that alone will make them feel better. And I'm not in this to make white people feel better. I'm in this, all of this, to make white people change their behavior. I need you to do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to talk or to listen so much as I need you to
Or to
do a
feel.
thing.
Or to feel.
Yeah, I got it. I need you to remove that initial feeling from the conversation, because that is just going to grind us in the mud, right? Your feelings, because somehow we are considering the white feeling and we are not really at all considering my feelings, because the basis of your question, generally speaking, is probably my trauma. How about I don't want to do that? Why do I have to dig up all these? Why do I have to dig up 400 years of it to make you feel good? 400 years where you have not reckoned as a society, right? That's what all of the tension right now is about, because America is being forced to reckon. It is, once again, for the record, once again, being forced to reckon with race
Mm-hmm.
and with whiteness. And we're doing so with better language, better ideas, even more history, more tools. We're coming here with a full toolbox to talk about this. So that's
Well,
why I don't get into the one-on-one. Like if I had to fix white people one person at a time, black people will be dead by the time you get half white people on board.
I guess like you talk about again, it's the response. It's not like every single we're gonna seek them out like door to door. It's like it's just you put out a thing, you put out a piece of content, you put out a thought on Twitter or whatever it is, and you have the responses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the instinct is going to be okay, that this is an opportunity, there's an opportunity, there's an opportunity, and then I go through that too. I guess I notice like patterns. You do them enough, you notice like patterns, right? So like as an example, I deal with a lot of the talk about feelings, that there's a feeling that in our board gaming space that this conversation is out to make people uncomfortable and out to ultimately cancel things, right?
Yeah.
Out to ultimately take things away from people. Like I like to say, like, okay, the molten core of resistance is twofold. It's don't take my stuff and don't tell me what to do. Like that's like, it feels like the molten core of resistance, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
on some level, it's about most of these conversations kind of reduced to like some version of please reassure me, mouthy POC of these feelings, these fears that I have, that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to take that this is about taking my stuff or telling me what to do. Right.
Or worse, that I'm okay. Right? Like I agree with everything you're saying. Just make sure that I'm okay.
Oh,
Right? Which is
am I racist? Am I doing racist? No. You're okay.
right.
Like,
Right.
mm-hmm.
Stop asking for these coffee dates. Right? Stop asking to go have coffee with black people, because we know what you're doing. Right? You want to have the conversation, right?
Right.
Because you want to feel better. And yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you got it. You got it. I mean,
Eh,
that's what's happening. I mean, and it's tough. It's tough.
eh,
Like every day, that we're always having to contend with it.
and that's a thing that we invite a lot of listeners to think about. It's like, okay, when you ask a question, what's the point? I think there's this idea that like, okay, well, I want to learn and I want to be a better person. I want to try to help. How can I help?
Oh, listen, I wrote a whole essay on that too.
Okay.
Listen, the first thing you do is act like the internet exists, right? Do not burden your black coworker or your black friend or your black lover or anything with that question. That question has been answered 1,000 times over. any way that you want to have that question answered. If you want it in video, it's been done. If you want it as a podcast, it's been done. If you like to read, those books exist. If you want to watch it in a movie, that exists. The songs about it exist, right? So you don't need to burden me personally, individually with that question. You need to do some homework. And guess what? You can do it anytime you want with that little thing in your pocket called a phone. The phone will give you all the answers. The answers are already there. We have been giving the answers for at least the way that we're talking about it now. We've been giving those answers for 150 years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, seriously, it just takes a little effort on your part. Mm-hmm. You can literally type into Google, what is racism? And you'll get a pretty decent answer now, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe 10 years ago, that answer needed some work, but it's a better answer now, right?
Because we have the language of systems and we have the language of, the idea of like, okay, two Americas, like that was the big thing about January 6th, right? Like this highlights two Americas. Imagine if January 6th was done by a bunch of Black folks.
Talk about fantasy.
It never would have been done because I think the community knows better.
Not even close. I
mean, there's no way that would have ever even happened anywhere near close. That. But like, just imagine, like, the idea of two Americas, like people that really kind of brought home for people. So like, in terms of education, it's like, okay, just the fact that there are two rules for things. That's a good place to start.
Well, what's interesting, you mentioned January 6th, and what's interesting about that is that well-meaning white people watched that and they were horrified, as well they should be, right? And they thought that meant there were now three Americas. And my answer to that is no, it's still two. Now I need you to figure out why that's true. How close are you to what they did and why they did it? Because they didn't do it out of truth or justice or because Blue Lives Matter. All of that went out the window on January 6th, right? They are responding to perceived slights, attacks, whatever, on whiteness.
Mm-hmm. On whiteness. Theft. That's what they were chanting, stop the steal. And it wasn't just about, the Trump thing. It's about stop the steal.
Yeah. Which again, it all comes down to whiteness, not white people. I mean, if that makes you feel bad, don't think of it as white people. Think of it as whiteness. Think of it as this thing, this system behind all the systems.
It's an ideology, an idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's a sunken ideology for many, right? They don't perceive it, and so they don't think of it that way. And I would challenge them to do so.
Mm-hmm. Is there any aspect of whiteness that should be covered that we haven't covered yet, or did we cover kind of some of the main points?
I think it's impossible to cover all the aspects, right?
Well, I guess like things in terms of especially relevant to our community, right? Especially welcome to board gaming and geeky and geek culture and everything. Okay. So are there aspects? Yeah, our community is like multi-layered, right? But in terms of like, I think the biggest thing that I don't make any bones about it. I want change, right? I think that, and that sounds scary to people. Right. It sounds scary. Oh, what are you changing? I know that there's a lurking fear, speaking again, fear, emotions, that kind of thing, that the change is going to kind of result in some kind of flipped hierarchy. That it's about like, okay, well, we've been on top for so long. Well, then when you guys become in charge, then it's just going to flip and then we're going to be on the outs, and then we don't want that.
Well, I think, first of all, the thing to bear in mind is that we are unlikely, except for companies and games and, designs that are done by people of color. Generally speaking, we will never be in charge of those things. So
it's impossible.
Sleep well, TSR. Right? Yeah. You get to keep your office. Okay.
Right.
We just want to change the game a little bit sometimes, right? Or for board games, right? We would just like to see maybe a couple of Black characters in this game. It's not like Black people weren't there in history, right? No matter what your game is about, some person of color was there, right?
Mhm.
I don't care if you were playing Ticket to Ride 1700 edition. We were there, right? So it's really just kind of there's no loss here in that. Like they perceive it as losing something
Mm.
when all
Mm.
we're doing is adding.
Right.
What are you
Yeah.
losing with the addition of other people? What I mean, that's a serious question. What is it you think you're losing? And I
Mhm.
think the answer is
The normality, like the central position.
I mean,
That's what you're losing.
at least, right? They're losing, they think they're losing something more core than that. They are losing in their minds power, right?
Yeah. 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 Mhm.
As if my Baltic Avenue presence would upend your boardwalk existence. Come on, man. Come on.
Mhm.
Come on.
I this that's probably a good as good a place to end as any. In terms of talking about we're deconstructing whiteness, right? And there's like you said before, it's too big to talk about. But at the end of the day, we need to level up our conversation about at the very least, people's like separate white people from whiteness. The very least, we get anything out of this. And understanding what whiteness is, and I think a good way to thinking of like quote unquote whiteness is that power is a limited thing, and that representation is a limited thing. It's like there's a zero sum game. Race is a zero sum game. It's in the word race. It's a race. Literally, and only one person can win a race, right? And if I'm not
Sure.
winning the race, then I'm losing it. So then that's a mindset of like, okay, if a group of people that looks like me is in pole position, and then everybody else behind me. So like if they, it's so demographically it's happening, and so like power wise it's trying to happen. This idea that like once they get ahead of, once that group of people that doesn't look like me gets ahead of people that look like me, I'm screwed. I don't get stuff anymore. I don't. The people are going to tell me what to do,
Yeah,
and I.
and that's a fear-based position, right? But it is a position of fear that comes from some deep-seated understanding of how you got what you got, right? It's like white people go, "Oh my God, don't change this thing because it takes away these things." And it's like, okay, but how do you think these things got here, right? They're concerned that non-white people will respond to with every ounce of power that we are able to grasp, that we will become white people, that we will respond like historical white people do.
Mhm.
And I think that if that was in us, you'd have already seen a completely different type of reckoning up to date, and you
Right.
haven't, because that's not what we're trying to accomplish. That's not what we're about.
It's a whole
We're,
different orientation. It's not a race for us. Like
well, I mean, not only is it not a race, like we're not even aimed at the same finish line,
mhm.
right? Like to them, their finish line looks one way, and we're trying to get to something that's actually, most of us are trying to get to something that's actually genuinely equitable, right? We
Multicultural.
actually
Mhm.
want the
Right.
equality you promised, and
Mhm.
you're not providing it. And when we point that out, that doesn't make us the bad guy, right? We're not the bad guy here. The only other thing that I'll say, I guess, before we go is
Sure.
I would caution people not to lean too hard in the separation of white people and whiteness, right?
Mm.
Because, whiteness is white people's thing. That it can exist beyond white people doesn't mean that we get to take white people out of the equation. We must always keep them in the whiteness equation. That's generally how we are encountering it. So we
Yeah,
always
there
have
is
to
no
keep,
like Casper the Friendly Whiteness Ghost. There's that doesn't exist,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
exactly. I mean, there are good white people, but that's not really, I mean, that's not really what we're trying to accomplish here, right? We're kind of going for a much larger numbers game here.
Mhm.
I don't even really need you as a white person to be great as a person. I just need you to have as I just need your whiteness to have as little effect on me in any negative way as possible,
Mm.
right? I'm happy to take the positive aspects of your whiteness, your self-aware aspects,
Mhm.
but it's all the other parts and the majority of the parts, the ones that work against me, that that we have to contend with, that we have to unpack.
I would actually contend that anything good that comes out of quote unquote whiteness doesn't come from whiteness. It comes from like culture, and culture being locally instantiated. So it's like I think of rock music. I'm a huge rock music person,
Mm.
right? And like rock is white people for the most part, but then you look at it and it's like people don't make songs out of their whiteness. They make songs because of where they're from. Like there's southern rock and there's the coastal and there's all these different like groups that are emerging and they're very localized, right? So it's like even like the quote unquote like even when quote unquote white people do good stuff, I don't even know what's coming out of their quote unquote identity as a white person. I think it's coming out of their identity of where they're from.
So I don't even perceive rock and roll or rock music as white music, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I mean, it is music that white people have co-opted, but
Right.
to
Okay.
me,
So yeah,
that's
that's a bad example because there's a history like jazz and all that
exactly,
kind of stuff. Yeah. So I guess I grew up as
exactly.
a child of the '80s. Well, the hair metal and
Understood,
all that stuff.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
but
No,
as an example of like think like a cuisine or something like that, anything that's cultural, anything that's a practice, or even like an idea, philosophy, or whatever, like it emerges from a place. It doesn't emerge from a racial identity. Like no, to me, almost like nothing good emerges from a racial identity. Like we can chalk the racial identities and almost be better off. Like the racial identity was like it's a 400-year-old thing. It's like it arose because of the world became aware of itself when with the age of exploration. And oh my God, we have all these people. We have to like come up with a shorthand way, a shortcut way of referring to all these people. Oh, black, white, and these different
mm,
other things. So it's like it's almost like, and I don't know that I don't even know if that's possible now to like deconstruct, black people or white people these color codes and come to a more kind of just cultural way because I hear what you're saying. It's like whiteness is the problem, and I wonder if
yes.
there's a way to like say okay, have even taking your point that like we can't like separate whiteness from white people, like
Mm.
there's still an invitation there for white people to check out of whiteness, but then what do they check into? They check into cultural identities. They check into more localized identities, or they check into just a multicultural vision, which is I think what we're trying to go for.
So I, so I think that those are fine goals that we all need to get comfortable understanding that we will not realize them.
Fair.
And so once you kind of know that, right, like that should change your work, right? It's okay to say, well, race is really just a construct. Like that's fine to say, but that doesn't change the fact that I just got pulled over,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't
Fair.
change the fact that my kid's teacher teaches them differently. It doesn't change the fact that I didn't get the job because of my name. So it's fine to have those goals and those ideals, but something that I generally beg people to keep in mind is the math. And what I mean by that is if you're running a race and somebody is swinging a machete at you while you run, how much of you will be left by the time you hit the finish line? Right? And I think, at least in America, history is an incredible indicator here. Like don't take my word for it, take history's word for it, right? History has proven us over and over again that I don't care what you think about the construct, the reality is you're not going to make it to the finish line trying to deconstruct the construct,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need to make it through the reality. And it's okay to say that. It has to be okay to say that, right? We have to be able to say, okay, well, here's a fight we're not going to win while I'm alive.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to build something so that the person that looks like me that comes after me isn't getting hacked with a machete on the way to the finish line. And to be honest, I don't know if we'll ever hit the finish line. I mean, I'll be completely honest, personally, I'm a bit of a, I'm a bit of a, pessimist.
Pessimist,
So
yeah.
that's not clear in my
Fair,
essays, right?
fair, yeah.
I'm a bit of a pessimist. And so this to me, I generally think of it as what can we afford to do and what can we afford to not do? And if I believe with everything that I know and everything that I've read and everything that I've written and everything that I've thought, if I thought that America was capable of doing that, even within 100 years of achieving a racially equitable, or racially irrelevant, I guess is what they're fighting for when you say that. If I thought that that was possible in 100 years, I would be writing something else other than what you're reading. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just history already. And look, and ask yourself, this is going to get real pessimistic. I'm so sorry. But what happened at the Capitol on January 6th should not have been able to happen in 2021. Like that should not have been possible if we were even remotely close to doing the kinds of assessments and criticisms and just work, anti-racism work. If we were doing that and capable of doing that, that would have never happened. And it happened so easily. Mm-hmm. To me, that is, you want to talk about a canary in a coal mine. There you go.
Yeah, it's a big old canary.
Right, dead canary. That canary is dead.
All right, no, I mean, it's a pessimistic outlook, but I invited you to share your voice.
Right? I like to think of it as a realist, but yes.
Okay, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, like I think that we can argue that for a little bit. I mean, I think the outlook of my channel is a little bit more optimistic, but I think that I'm focused on board gaming, right? If I focus on other things, I think I go maybe I'd be more on your boat. But like, what are we asking for in board gaming? We're asking for more black and brown people on the boxes making the games, and it doesn't feel like a really hard ask. Maybe I haven't been shot down enough. I don't know.
Well, I think we have been asking for that. And so they have been providing that. But the reason why it still keeps coming up is A, it's not happening enough. And B, a lot of this would go away if we were incorporated into design processes and creation processes, right? You would almost not have to have this conversation at some point, maybe even in the near future, if that were the case. So this, when I said it's an easy fix, it's an easy fix. It takes time, but I think that it's something that you can fix. That is, if you want to have a coffee date, have a coffee date at TSR. If you want to have the coffee date about racism, have it at Wizards of the Coast, right? Mm-hmm. Let us in on the process before you put the thing out. And that's half the battle. That's half the battle, is putting us in the room. Mm-hmm. Putting us on the board is nice. Putting us in the room is better.
Because that makes sure that we're on the board. That will automatically make sure that we're on the board.
At least. Right. I don't think we even know what the potential of all of that engagement might be, right? I think there's so many things that could come out of that genuine attempt to fix just that agency, right? I don't think we can calculate the benefits that would come from that.
Look at that. I got you to end on a positive note. Yeah. So, I mean, we're at the end of our conversation. This was excellent. I didn't know what was going to come. I knew it was going to be good. And there was definitely some food for thought. I'd love to hear what people have in the comments. I will do the work of, working through people's comments. And we'll see how it goes. But Scott, please share with us. You said before you had a Medium blog, but is that lapsing at this point to focus on other work?
Well, yeah. So, I'm still doing a regular column every week, right? So if you go on my Twitter or my Facebook, or my Instagram, I always post anything that I publish on any of those platforms.
What are those handles for you? Share that for the people.
Oh, that's a great question. So on Twitter, it's Scott Woods Says. On Instagram, it's Scott Woods Son for some reason. But on Facebook, I'm way easy to find, right? First of all, my name is Scott and I'm Black, so I'm way easy to find.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, you just find me on all that stuff. I'm really good about, because I'm always impressing upon creators and artists that you should always be reminding people that that's what you do. And so I'm regularly got something going on there. And my bio links in those things always will take you to like a link tree page where all of my stuff is, or an authory page where all my stuff is. So I make it real easy. Once you find me, I make it real easy for you to find my work.
Mm. All right, lots of different platforms, and you have some published. You have some other books on the cooker, waiting to come forth in the next couple of days. We haven't even gotten into poetry. Poetry is not. It's something I need to get into more. You know, as I get into art, as I get into artistry, and as I get into like expression, you know, stories on this channel, it's definitely a door I need to open at some point. So,
okay, if you must.
Not me, but other folks who are much more artistically inclined than me.
Sure.
But Mr. Scott Woods, thank you so much for the time. It's been a pleasure.
No, I had a great time. Thank you, Jason.
If you can change your mind, you can change the world, people. So until next time, later, everybody.